welcome to you as together we look at Luke chapter 13 verses 31 to 35. So not a very long reading. The arresting image is the fox, Herod, tetrarch of Galilee, described as a fox, so wily and obviously lethal to hens. And Jesus desired to be like a mother hen, to gather the people of Jerusalem under her wings, to keep them warm, protected and loved. Before we examine that image a bit further, let's just go back to the start of this pericope and notice that some Pharisees bring this warning to Jesus. So they've overheard that Herod has issued some sort of order about Jesus and that he is in danger of his life. And the specifics around how that's exactly going to work are not clear, but the warning is very clear. This shows us that the Pharisees, or some of them, do have some sympathy with Jesus, a connection with him, and certainly a desire to protect him from the worst aspects of the Roman judicial system. If you've seen The Chosen, you'll see that in that movie or series of videos, this dynamic in the Pharisees played out at some length. Just have to excuse the background noise of a new puppy who's running around like crazy. And this is not the typical image we see of the Pharisees in the Gospels or in Christian teaching generally. The Pharisees were certainly very concerned, and later Paul is connected with this group. They're very legalistic and concerned with the Levitical law and keeping it and making sure other people keep it. But of course, they were very well versed in the material of the Hebrew scriptures, and so they recognize so much of what Jesus says and does as signs of a prophet, and even for some of them the beginning of realization that this might be the Messiah, because the qualities are all there. Returning to the fox-hen analogy, the fox is wily and interested in the hens that lives on them, particularly the chicks, which are easy pickings for their sustenance. For that is how they stay in business and stay alive, and indeed that is how the Roman Empire worked. This is not to say that it was all bad, but there was a very heavy hand to keep things in order, and there was an understanding that conquering more land brought more chicks and more food. Originally, in the initial conception, back to Rome, but of course, as that all began to fall apart, so did the Roman Empire. The hen is a more naive character, so not trying to conquer anything particularly or expand her empire, but to protect those in her care. So she presents a more naive figure, and even in our day, a sort of silliness, not a serious animal. But looking more closely, and if you've ever kept hens, you'll know this, there is a strong connection with the natural world and the natural order, not living on top of it. And I mean by that, not at the bottom rung of the natural world. Hens are not predators in that sense, although they'll chase around bugs and worms. So fully part of the natural order, but they lack that predatory behaviour. I think this image is important too because Jesus likens himself to the feminine, and an image which is connected to the wisdom literature as wisdom teaching. A mother hen is certainly not something most people interested in power would ever select as an analogy for their way of being. Jesus tells the Pharisees that he's got work to do still, casting out demons, healing people, and then on the third day the work will be finished. It's interesting that this is the third day and not the seventh day. This on the seventh day would be a natural go-to, a sort of day of rest, the 7 days of God's creation. But no, it's the third day. So there's a clear reference here to the crucifixion and to the resurrection. He must get on underway and go to Jerusalem, even though it will be dangerous. And he even references being killed, that his death is coming, and it must happen in Jerusalem because prophets are not killed anywhere but. That isn't actually true, but Jesus is helping them understand, or perhaps just reflecting on what he knows to be true, that he will be killed in Jerusalem. It's the end of the reading that is most pithy. See, your house is left to you. So he's saying to his listeners, and by extension really to the people of Jerusalem that he's just been referencing, that their house is left to them. They are not actually to be devastated. They'll have what they have. They'll have what they built. In other words, life will carry on. Your life will carry on just as it is. But they will no longer see him. And it ends with, until you're able to say, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. To recognize that Jesus is the Messiah, and indeed Jesus is the Lord. So for your faith journey, I think this is encouragement for each one of us to never hesitate to say, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord, to not hesitate to own and witness to our following in the way of the Lord, wearing crosses, doing good deeds, sticking to things like Lent, celebrating the great festivals. All this is part of that, so that it can be said of you, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. He comes in God's name, and we come in his.